When I was 11 years old, my mom moved me to Los Angeles, and I grew up with this fear of getting older. Not so much the number, but the actual aging process. There were all these ideas of what we were told women were supposed to be. We're supposed to be blonde. We're supposed to have perfect D-cup implant breasts. We're supposed to never want to eat carbs. And we're supposed to never have an original thought, be really fit, addicted to exercise, and never, ever, ever show our age. And so there are just thousands of people walking around with skin that it looks like it's either been burned or stretched within an inch of its life. And so luckily I got out of there and I moved up here 9 years ago, and I love it up here. And I'm smack dab in the middle of my life. I'm 47 years old. Any other middle-aged, awesome people out there? And I know that I'm not supposed to say this, but I totally dig it. I think it's so much better than I was in my 20s, and I'm so much more comfortable in my skin. I feel a freedom to be able to say things without really censoring myself. I get to travel around the world and collect awesome passports and go get lost in foreign countries. I've been able to start a couple businesses. I've been able to be useful in ways. I write and I tell stories, and I try to help people. Mostly, though, the most important thing that I've ever got is this relationship with myself, that I trust myself and my instincts implicitly. That's not something I came from. My family did not really understand trust and loyalty. To animals, yeah, but not so much to people. They were loyal to things like rage and pain and anger, and they passed it down from generation to generation. Sort of like a family heirloom quilt or a recipe, right? So they weren't all bad. My grandfather was salt of the earth. He was amazing. He was absolutely the kindest human I've ever known. And he was fiercely loyal, and he loved my grandmother, even though she humiliated him verbally every chance she got, even though she cheated on him during the entire 45 years of their marriage. He loved her and stayed loyal to her till the day he died. Then there was my grandmother, and she was loyal to, she loved animals, but she was mostly loyal to her own best interests and any reflective surfaces she passed. She was beautiful and cruel. Appearances meant everything to her. She was 5 feet tall, petite, and perfect, but she lived in rural Pennsylvania, a life that she never wanted and felt trapped in. And my mom came along, who was a mistake, 8 years after my uncle's. And my mom was chubby and shy and awkward and unwanted, and my grandmother treated her accordingly. My grandmother never once put her arms around my mother and told her that she loved her. So when my mom was 18, the only wish that she ever had was to leave home and get away from her mother. So she left rural Pennsylvania with no self-worth, with no voice, and she moved down to Washington, D.C. And a few years later, I came along, also unwanted, also unexpected. History has a way of repeating itself if you're not careful. Now, my father was out of the picture because he was married, and actually I have a sister 6 months younger than I am. And I love my mom. It was just the two of us for a long time, but my mom has never had a feeling that didn't completely overwhelm her. And I wanted all of these things from her. She was my sun, moon, and stars as a kid, and I wanted her love and her affection and validation and self-worth, but she just didn't have those things to give to me. So I went looking for them. And my mom still is a prime example of what it's like to be committed to pain and fear. That's the way she's lived her life. Now, I met my father when I was almost 25, and I discovered that he was loyal to seducing young women that were vulnerable, that didn't have a lot of self-worth, white supremacy, and populating the world with white children. So according to my dad, he didn't believe in God, but he believed in the power of his genetics, and so I have 19 half-brothers and sisters. He got 5 women pregnant in 1 year. I guess you could call him ambitious. So I met him once, and I didn't see him again for another 18 years. And I was just stuck in this family. And they threw around I love yous as if they meant something, but underneath, there was always this venom bubbling beneath the surface. I love you, even though you're a huge disappointment. I love you, even though you'll never be enough. I love you, even though you ruined my life. So my mom, I don't blame her for this, but I think she just really wanted to be loved. So she went on vacation for a couple weeks in Los Angeles, and she met a man, and they fell in love, and 3 months later, we moved out west. We were going to start this family. Now, she didn't know he was a pedophile. It's not like they wear T-shirts. But within a year, at 12 years old, all of this came bubbling to the surface. The night it happened, the first night it happened, I was shattered, naturally, and really scared and broke. But my mom broke that night, too. She stood there, so angry and so lost. And a part of her just went away and never came back. The part that was supposed to love and protect me. The part that believed there was anything good in this world just disappeared. She didn't know what to do, so she did nothing. So we didn't move out that next day or a month after that or a year. We stayed with him for another 4.5 years. So it was 4.5 years of being afraid of shadows and wearing extra layers of clothing in the summer heat, waking up in the middle of the night with him standing over me, watching, of me wondering when the next time it was going to happen. I knew at that moment that I couldn't trust anyone, especially people that said they loved you. And so I took that precious little heart that I had and I buried it really deep where nobody could ever get at it again. Thanks to the help to vats of vodka and lots of recreational substances. And I filled that void, that emptiness, that self-doubt with a parade of boys and men who I chose for all the wrong reasons. I ignored every single warning sign. Every time red flags would pop up, I would get out my green bucket of paint and I would paint them all bright green. And I just kept inflicting damage on myself over and over again. Those years were incredibly painful. And I also want to tell you today that I have a beautiful life. But it didn't happen overnight. It took a minute. And when I was 17, I got sober. And I started to pick up all these little broken pieces of myself and crazy glue them back together. But just because I got sober didn't mean I stopped hurting myself. I just found new and creative ways of doing it, right? But little by little, I got better. And what I realized as I was going through this journey was that I wasn't a kid anymore. At 18, 19, 20 years old, I was an adult. And that nobody was doing anything to me that I wasn't allowing. And that victim cape that I wore around me was suffocating me. And I couldn't breathe anymore. And it wasn't cute to be the broken little girl making all of these mistakes. And because I was sober, I had to feel the consequences of all of those actions. And it was intense, that moment, that exquisite pain when I realized I was the asshole in the middle of my life. And it wasn't about my parents, and it wasn't about what they did or didn't do or what they gave me or couldn't give me or what they deprived me of. It was about what I did with it that mattered. And so from that point on, it just changed the whole direction of my life. Now, I've wanted to give up a million times, and I have made so many mistakes. Thank God I didn't listen to my head. And people around me taught me to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And when you get tired, you lay down and you take a nap, but you don't give up. You keep going. Now, I'm almost 30 years sober. I have a life that I never, here's your wildest dreams. Thank you, but I'm Irish. I'm like a hope to die drunk. I take very little credit for it. But there's wildest dreams, and then there's my life, which is so far beyond. And it's got its struggles, it's got its challenges, but I trust myself today. That is amazing. And I'm also able, my dad died a few years ago, and I reconnected with him before he died, and I was able to thank him for being exactly the father I needed him to be, which was absent. I look at my mother at the way that she is, and I thank her. If it weren't for her, she had no voice to give me, so I found my own. And now I have this show, this storytelling company, where I give women and girls voices because I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm a product of this, so I thank all of my teachers, not just the ones that gave me gold stars and tickles, but the ones that kicked my teeth in. They forced me to figure out what I'm made of. You know, being subjected to cruelty as a child taught me the power of words and how certain ones spoken can never be unspoken. And so you have to be careful with them because you can inflict emotional damage on people that hurts far worse than any physical scars. I learned that cruelty, that hurt people, and I have to heal my wounds. I can't act that out on other people. And lastly, I learned that abandonment taught me loyalty. I go and I grab life, and I don't ever let it go. I believe that this is an incredible journey. I have no idea where I'm going to go, but I know I can never abandon myself. ever again. It's not about what you do to me anymore. It's not about whether you come in or out of my life. I have to be honest with myself and everyone around me. And I'm going to carry myself and try to keep going as much as I can. Thank you so much.
Let's hear it for Erika. She's a very brave woman for sharing that with us. Thank you.